Hello and welcome to the Apologetics 315 podcast with your hosts Brian Otten and Chad Gross. Join us for conversations and interviews on the topics of apologetics, evangelism, and the Christian worldview.
But if I'm right, and we can stop this thing, Lenny, you will have saved the lives of millions of registered voters.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Chad Gross. How you doing, Chad?
I'm doing great. Having a good week. Looking forward to this interview.
There's a guest with us today. He doesn't have a name. We can't name him. We're talking today with the Belfast Bigot. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My first ever interview, by the way, so it's all good. We'll see how it goes.
All right.
You're in some unknown location. Now your accent, I'm familiar with your accent. Do you want to disclose your location, or are you in a secret bunker somewhere?
I'm in the Bigot lair, which is deep underground.
The Bigot lair. Nice.
Where I oppress women and minorities. So it's a top secret location. It's North Belfast. I think that's on my blog anyway. Yeah, North Belfast.
Okay,
Yes.
so you will say nothing more than what's on your blog. So I want to draw our listeners to thebelfastbigot.com. You're also on Twitter and Facebook.
Not Twitter.
Oh, you don't have a Twitter? Okay.
No, too much social media in my life as it is. I think Twitter would just send me over the edge. I think I'm not. Although I have considered it, maybe for the future, but I don't. Not at the moment.
Maybe someone had retweeted one of your tweets because I searched for Belfast Bigot and I saw something on Twitter.
It does get retweeted. I only realized this about a year ago that people were retweeting my Facebook stuff on Twitter. And it's quite interesting to go through the responses and all that rabbit hole and the trail that leads down, which got me thinking about maybe starting up a Twitter account if it reaches more people. But I don't know, you can have too much social media, I think. It's not healthy.
Well, I agree. I don't even go on the Facebook, but I've heard about it.
The Facebook. Yes, the Facebook.
Strictly MySpace at the moment.
Yeah. Yes. It's a great site. Yeah.
So what's the purpose of this interview? People are probably wondering what is the Belfast Bigot? This sounds kind of strange. So what is the Belfast Bigot? Why have you called your website that? What do you mean by bigot? What are you doing?
Yeah, well, obviously I don't consider myself an actual bigot. Although people do think that I am. So it's kind of an ironic taking back of the word bigot, I think, because bigot traditionally means like someone who is intolerant to a person who holds different opinions than yourself. But I think these days it has evolved into just general disagreement. So if you disagree with me on anything at all, I'm going to label you a bigot. And so as a society, I think we've suffered for what I call bigot inflation, where everything is a bigot to the point that the word actually has no currency anymore. So I didn't mind calling myself a bigot because everyone's a bigot to some degree, according to somebody. So that's fine. But also I think the main reason I chose that word, well, two reasons. One, it's got a nice ring to it, the Belfast Bigot. And second of all, it's really to take the attention of me as a person. So, okay, you're gonna call me names. That's fine. I've already called myself that name that you're going to call me. So now let's concentrate on what your responses to what I have to say and just keep it simple. So we'll, attack the argument, not the person. So it's a tactic in that respect, was to kind of deflect from the personal insults that they're going to aim at me and get them talking about what we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Wow. That's clever.
Thank you.
Well, you're a Christian and you're coming from the Christian worldview.
Yes.
You kind of talk about what is the history of the blog? I mean, how did you get that started? What motivated you to do that? Yeah,
just really getting lost in online arguments, I think. I think that's how a lot of blogs start, kind of observing these debates, particularly with the rise of new atheism in the past 10 years or so, and the kind of the knock-on effect that that's had on how local atheists think and interact with Christians in the world of social media, really, and just observing how these arguments kind of almost always go nowhere, and how fruitless they are, and how bad sometimes even Christians can come across. And I suppose it came about just wanting to add a coherent voice to what's being said, because there's a lot of godly people in Northern Ireland, a lot of good people, a lot of church people, and there's also a fair amount of religiosity, I would say, as well. But there's very little in the way of kind of apologetics, kind of rationally defending the faith in a winsome manner, and I thought that was lacking. And I thought maybe I could, without going into too much detail, but my background is in writing, so I do write, and I thought, well, I could use that skill and maybe kind of put a different kind of voice out there. Because traditionally, I don't know if you guys know much. Well, certainly you would, Bran, but the history of Northern Ireland is a lot of people, tribes shouting at one another, over one another, and I just thought, well, I think maybe it's time for a change. So that's how I came about.
So you mentioned interacting with people online and engaging them thoughtfully and apologetically. When you're doing that, what are some of your goals?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of goals. So firstly, I suppose the biggest goal is that I have to be mindful that I'm not always talking to the person that I'm talking to. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've had quite a few private messages from people who have said, "Oh, I was reading what you were saying to this guy or this person, and it really struck home, or I really disagree." And then what often happens is I'll enter into like a friendly kind of interaction,
right,
where I'll take time responding privately to this person, and those conversations are very fruitful. So that's my main goal, is to kind of reach those people, rather than the people who are shouting at me or who I'm shouting back at.
Right, the people who seem to be a bit more open to what you're saying.
Those on the fence, or who are silently, maybe in their own private spiritual life, they're maybe unconvinced or they're not sure, but they're sincerely seeking.
Sure. Yeah.
And so those are the people who I would like. I mean, and sincerely seeking either way. It could be a Christian who's thinking about atheism, or vice versa. It's not, but generally it's not really the person that I'm engaging with.
Yeah.
Although sometimes it is. But quite often, it's not those guys.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing then is kind of to just give a good account of Christ and the Christian faith, namely that it is intellectually stimulating, logically coherent, and existentially fulfilling, which a lot of people don't seem to think that Christianity is. If you read any of the local kind of social media pages or blog sites, they tend to think that we're, actually, I've heard them say that we're mentally ill, or that we're all hateful dinosaurs, and it's really not like that at all. I think we can defend what we believe, and we can do it intelligently and rationally.
Chad and I both got to know each other through doing blogging and apologetic stuff. Oh boy, back in the day, back in the day, 2008, 2009, I don't know, but. For us, it was all for me at least. I don't know about you, Chad, but it was a lot of response at that time about Dawkins and the new atheism, and so that was like the main thing going on. And then, we recognized that too. We were always interacting and there was blog comments going on, and we knew there was all kinds of other people listening to those debates. And sure. I would hear from someone on email, and they'd be like, "Oh, I've been watching your conversation with so-and-so. It was really interesting." Yeah. Thinking, okay, it's like they're pulling up a chair and watching this over the course of however it goes. And, he's keep coming back for every blog post you do, he comments or something like that. So, there's always someone watching. And so it started off with us with, at least, I don't know, was it new atheism stuff with you, Chad, that kind of was one of your main things?
Yeah, just by necessity, because it was what was kind of hot and what everybody was talking about, and it seemed that they were having a great deal of influence, especially on the way that skeptics were addressing Christianity, and so it almost was begging for an answer.
So Belfast Bigot. My question is,
you just like saying that. I can tell. You just like saying it. Yeah.
Do you go by Belfast Bigot, just plain Bigot?
BB.
Anything at all. BB. Yeah, BB is good.
B squared. Right. So, those are some of the topics that sort of spurred, a lot of posts and stuff in the past. But what about you? You mentioned that being something that started with, but I when I go on your site, I see a lot of things along the lines of abortion, and knowing you personally, I know that is an area where you engage quite a bit. What topics are the main ones that are coming to the forefront for you?
Well, you talk about abortion. I do talk, probably 80 to 85% of my content would be specifically about abortion. So much to the point where I considered kind of either changing my name or setting up another Facebook page called the Belfast Bigot.
Oh wow!
Just to kind of
nice,
and just specifically to talk about abortion, because people have accused me, like my detractors would come on and say, this is all you talk about, it's really boring and whatnot. But actually, it's something, while I had never intended to talk about abortion at all, really, and from the beginning, it is something, because of the political interest in Northern Irish politics, and because it was never out of the news, and still not out of the news. And it's something that has now had a huge impact on our society as a whole. I thought that I would take the apologetics angle from defending the faith and transfer it over to defending the unborn, really. It's not something that I've ever particularly had an interest in. I always just assumed it was wrong, but assuming something is not the same as knowing something. And then I read a couple of books, and those books impressed on my heart the need to speak up for the defenseless, for the most vulnerable citizens that we have, the unborn.
What have been your main influences, do you think?
Well, Scott Klusendorf, I don't know if you've heard of Scott Klusendorf. He would be he's my go-to guy.
That guy.
I just find a lot of his. Yeah, he's very clear. He's very concise. He's very winsome as well, and he's funny. And his debates that he has, he's just so ruthless, but in a nice way.
I agree.
Coherent and clear. So a lot of his stuff, and a lot of the local organizations as well are pretty good. Like Both Lives Matter. I would meet with them every so often and chat with them about how best to go about our work. The Evangelical Alliance, who they're tied to, but mainly Scott Klusendorf and Stand to Reason, Greg Kokel as well. They would do a lot of stuff on the abortion issue. So those guys, a guy called Christopher Kazar as well. He's a Catholic philosopher. He's a huge name in the pro-life movement. His stuff is fantastic as well. And I think Scott Klusendorf and him, they would take a lot off each other. So there's plenty of resources out there.
I know in the States it's a little bit different, because it's a lot bigger place, and so I think most of our audience is not going to be within Northern Ireland or be very familiar with what the state of things is within the UK legislation. Can you get an abortion? Is it legal? What's that look like? So if you're talking to an American audience primarily, how would you describe the situation between the UK, Northern Ireland, Ireland? If someone is in any of these places, what are their options and what are the laws? Yeah, so it's a bit complicated here, because Northern Ireland is treated as a separate entity. So even though we're part of the UK, we're kind of self-governing, or at least we should be in theory. Sometimes we are, sometimes we aren't. It's really quite a complex makeup. And to be honest, I'm not completely over all of it. It confuses even me, and I'm a local. But the long and short of it is that in 1967, an MP called David Steele pushed forward a private member's bill motion to liberalise the abortion laws in the UK, and that was successful. And that basically allowed abortions to take place for a wide range of reasons. Initially it was up until 28 weeks. And then in 1990, they revised that, and it was reduced to 24 weeks off the back of science. Funnily enough, because obviously the unborn are viable much earlier these days, 19 to 22 weeks. So they settled on 24 weeks. But none of that affected Northern Ireland. We managed to resist the extension of the 1967 Abortion Act until about just over a year ago. Actually, I'm sure you're both familiar, when it was kind of a Westminster power move, and we had this abortion law extended upon us without any kind of vote or any kind of say, under the guise of if you don't sort your own politics out, if you don't get back into government and govern yourselves, we're going to extend the abortion laws to Northern Ireland. And that's what happened.
So I have a question. I live in the States, and I'm curious as to, over here in the States, the majority, we have a slowly growing majority of the population who are pro-life, or at the very least are hesitant to support abortion. They'll say things such as, only when it's absolutely necessary, or something like that.
Yep.
And that's kind of, but yet our legislation really doesn't reflect that very well, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So over there, what is the feeling there? Like the common folk, that most people that you talk to, would you say that they're, more pro-life, and then it's really kind of the legislative issues that pro-abortion choice seems to continue to grow.
Well, this is interesting because a lot of pro-life activists here are saying that if it was put to the people,
right,
we would not have voted this abortion law in. And I agree to a certain extent, purely because we are a church society, and I think that most people, with the exception of the vociferous abortion activists, everyone that I work with that I've spoken to, everyone, even the pro-choice people, have to a certain degree, they're not fully on board with abortion. They'll always say, yeah, I'm in favor of the right to choose, but really on grounds of disability after 24 weeks, I'm not so sure.
Right.
However, in the south of Ireland, they did vote it in, and it was a landslide victory. It was 66 to 33 or 34, something like that, % of the population. Now, there's loads of different complicating factors as to why that happened. A lot of it, I think, was to do with a reaction to the crimes of the Catholic Church, and so they voted it in. So they're set up slightly different. But here, I don't think, and I actually think the abortion activists here know that, which is why they don't want debates. They don't want their argumentation put out there because they know that we wouldn't have any of it, really.
Yeah.
So I think that's the general feeling here, is that we're pro-life in the majority, and then the rest of the people would be uncertain about abortion. And then there's a tiny amount of people, I think, who would be what I would call logically consistent in their abortion activity. So they would be pro-choice in the proper sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, when we have interviewed Scott Klusendorf in the past, but it's been very rare that I've talked about abortion very much on the podcast. And so I'm curious, if someone's listening and they're like, well, yeah, I think that's wrong, and they have various views on that. Maybe they're just primarily coming from a religious point of view or a Christian worldview sort of thing, where they look at the Bible and are like, well, they see the sanctity of life, and they have that position, but they may not be able to argue for their position without maybe sounding like, well, the Bible says. And of course, the audience might not accept that. So I'm curious, when you are making your pro-life case, especially in the public square, as it were, what's your angle? You follow suit with the likes of Scott Klusendorf? And if so, either way, what would your case be? How would you come across?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, this, because recently I've discovered, and I think this has been simmering for a while in the States between the pro-life community, is this idea of incrementalism versus the abolitionists. I don't know if you'd be familiar with that, Chad.
Yes.
Yes. It's something that has, now that abortion is legal in Northern Ireland, I've noticed that crop up in pro-life circles. And so the angle from the abolitionists is that this is a salvation issue and that we need to just hit this head on. Abortion needs to be abolished immediately. I agree with that. I think we're all abolitionists in that sense. I want to see the end of abortion, but I'm not sure tactically if that's the wisest way, because we're dealing with principalities and powers here. It's not it's not quite that simple. Whereas the incrementalists would be more, let's meet these people where they're at. Let's discuss science. Let's discuss philosophy. Because they're just going to dismiss out of hand what the Bible has to say about the sanctity of life, what my religious opinions are. They don't care. My angle then would be similar to Scott Klusendorf's. I think is just to simplify the argument. Like what is the unborn, and what qualifies as one of us? And I think we can take it there. I think that's a scientific question. What is the unborn? I think that question has been answered. I don't think there's any real debate amongst biologists or scientists as to when life begins. I think the only reason why there's confusion around that issue is because of political interest in abortion. And I think that was deliberate. What's the word? I can never pronounce that word. Obfuscation.
Obfuscation.
Yeah.
I need a vacation.
Yeah.
Well, it's odd you say that, bigot, because, because you think that you could say the word science and you'd have a little bit of credibility in that regard. But I mean, even in this transgender thing, it's like, well, let's talk about science. And then it's like, well, no, my feelings are more important. And, my political view on this is more important, it would seem. So,
yeah.
Have you noticed any when you engage with a scientific argument and say, well, you present your case, do you get pushback even though you're going the scientific route?
Yes, but not on scientific reasons. I mean, they can't really argue against when life begins, because especially after that recent survey done amongst biologists, where 95% came out and said that they believe that life begins at. I'll get you the link for that, but that was famous because it was made up of a lot of pro-choice biologists who gave a lot of pushback, thinking it was some crazy pro-life scheme, some political agenda. But yeah, they answered that in the end. So I don't think it's. I think it's a philosophical question where it comes. Mm-hmm. So the pushback that I would get is mostly it comes in three forms. So there's three types of pro-choicer that I have come across in my activities. So the first one would be that those that believe the unborn are not human at all. Okay, and then two, those that believe the unborn are human but they're not persons. And then the third would be that those who believe the unborn are human and persons, but that the mother's right to bodily autonomy trumps the baby's right to life. Okay, mm-hmm. So I think the first one is pretty easy to answer. If the unborn aren't human, then what are they? How is it possible for two human parents to beget something that's not human? Is it a cat? Like what do you mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't think that one. I don't often get that because I think they know that that's absurd. So the second one is they'll acknowledge the science and they'll say, well, of course they're human. It's a certain type of human, but it's not a person. And so then we get into personhood theory. And that's where things get particularly messy for them, I think, because the problem with personhood theory is that it gives the power to the person who does the defining. So whoever gets to define what a person is the one with the power. Whereas from the Christian point of view, personhood is something that is described, not defined. Because if you can define it, then you can define it any way you want, just according to whatever the strongest person in the room thinks. Mm-hmm. And we've seen plenty of examples of that through history, where women have not been persons, Black people haven't been persons, Jews haven't been persons. So I think that's the problem with personhood theory. So it really doesn't matter whether it's a person or not. To me, it's human, and that's the only thing that matters. Don't kill humans unless you have a really good reason. So when you say what's the scientific pushback, that would be it. They don't push back on the science, but they'll put a caveat in saying, yeah, it's human, but it's not a person. Mm-hmm. So they'll add their own personal philosophy to the end of the science.
So would you engage with are there people going on your Facebook page, or are you trolling, pro-choice people and just stirring up the hornet's nest, or how are your engagements taking place? Yeah, no, I used to do that mostly to get my name out, and then I realized this is completely futile, and I don't think it helps if it looks like I'm going to stir the pot. So no, I would get plenty of people on my own page coming over and offering up those similar types of arguments, and I'll try and be as polite as possible, because above everything else, I have to realize that I'm speaking with a human being who's made in the image of God. So I'm not gonna be nasty to them. I'm not gonna make them feel small. I'm going to engage with their arguments as best I can, and that's where most of the conversations take place. And then from that, people will get in touch privately. Mm-hmm. I'll have more meaningful further conversations with those people.
So when you're talking about engaging people in this, thoughtful way, that you want to be not only winsome, but also thoughtful and kind, and you want to represent Christ, what do you see some of the people making pro-life arguments, either online or in the public square? What mistakes do you see them making? What errors would you warn our listeners against and say, hey, we need to stop doing these things?
Yeah, so there are lots of bad pro-life arguments, I think, and ways to go about it, and I see it quite frequently. The standard "you're going to hell" line, I don't think is particularly helpful, even if it's true. I don't. Yeah. I don't think that that's going to help. And things like one of the arguments that I came across recently was, well, if you're gonna, you might abort the next Beethoven or the next, Gandhi.
Oh.
Yeah, but you might also abort the next Stalin. Like it's not. It's irrelevant because human beings are valuable because of what they are, which is human, not because of what they're going to grow up and be.
Yeah.
Not because of the value that they bring to society. It's because they're human. So it's irrelevant. So I would say a lot of that. And then just bombarding the conversation with pictures of graphic images and things. I don't think. Oh, we'll maybe talk about that later and my specific views on graphic images, but I don't think it's helpful.
Well, let's throw that in right now, because as long as we're talking about it, that was one of my questions. Is like sometimes people will say put up a billboard or something like that, or on the back of a trailer or something with a big placard, and it's showing some images of abortion. Now, on one hand, that's something you recoil at. Man, I can't believe you're putting that out there. But then again, well, this is what you want. So I can see the motivation and the shock factor. But what are your thoughts on that, pro and con?
Yeah, well, that's particularly relevant at the moment because I think some pro-choice activists have taken this to the city council, and I think they're in talks with getting some sort of restriction put in place for graphic images in and around the city centre and other places of protest. I think sensibly done, I'm in favor of graphic images. I think they're necessary. I think when you see a picture of abortion protests itself. You don't need to say anything. And I know they get accused of maybe these photographs are fake or they're really photographs of miscarriages, and you're pretending that they're abortions. That's nonsense. You can go to Google and you can get genuine, authentic pictures. Why would you lie? When they're so when they're so easy to come by. In terms of subjecting members of the public, unsuspecting members of the public, I don't think that's helpful. I think you're just going to get people annoyed. You're going to upset people. And I think it's going to generate a reason to detract from the core issue, which is, what is the unborn?
Mm-hmm.
Which it all comes back to, I think. And I think if you give the opposition any kind of excuse to talk about anything but their own beliefs, then it's not a good idea. Not a good idea.
Good point.
But generally, I think, and a lot of people miss this point because some people are completely against them, even pro-lifers.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the history of activism, even animal rights activism, anti-war activism, anti-slavery activism, they've all used graphic images. And for a simple reason is that they work. They're powerful. If you look at in history, the Emmett Till case in the States.
Right.
Yeah, the young boy who was lynched,
yes,
badly beaten and murdered because he spoke to a white woman, and his mother insisted that the picture of his open casket made the front pages because he was so badly disfigured. And I think that was one of the leading kind of changed the course of civil rights in America.
Right.
And the famous picture of the little girl with the napalm in Vietnam.
Yeah.
The beginning. Yeah. So and it's the same with it. But when you look at a broken fetus in a petri dish, it's unmistakably human, and that's why it is so powerful. And I think that's why the abortion industry really rebels vociferously against them, against the graphic images. So
yeah, it kind of shows what's behind the curtain.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
And as Brand said, this is what you want. Why can't we talk about it?
Yes.
This is what you want. So you can talk about it and you can advocate for it, but you can't show it. Why?
Yeah. Right. Right. Why? If there's nothing wrong with it, why are you ashamed?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, yeah. And to be fair, I think it's interesting that in the news at the moment, these graphic images, those who are against them and want to see them removed, they kind of use the guise of miscarriage as a reason why. So women will see these images of these aborted fetuses, and it will kind of bring back bad memories of their own miscarriages. And at first, I kind of dismissed that because I don't mind saying, I mean, my wife and I suffered a miscarriage. They're horrible, they're awful. But the reason why they're horrible is because a whole human life has been lost. So why would you want to create that through elective killing? Yeah. But some pro-life women did get in touch and they said that, these images do affect me because I've had miscarriages. And so I had to rethink that. So we just need to be very careful with them, I think. I think in a maybe an academic setting,
I like what you said about, you're forcing those images on the unsuspecting public where, okay, I got my kids with me right now and we're walking down the street and okay, don't look up there. I wouldn't want my kids to know what that is, but I want to be in control of when that information comes to them and how. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to force that upon other parents. But as you say, if you're in an academic setting or something and it's like, okay, let's talk about science. Yeah, how appropriate. Maybe a little bit along this line. Have you encountered Christians who have a pro-choice or pro-abortion view? I mean, and what's your take on that? What are their reasoning?
Yeah, I give this some thought, this question. Not in the wild. I've never met any in the wild. There are some who I've met who they've been persuaded maybe by the emotional rhetoric, rape, the hard cases. And I can understand that, but nobody who's been out and out pro-choice. However, I have met them online, and it's difficult. I'm not really sure where they get their reasoning from. To be honest, I would assume that the Bible's quite clear on taking human life, but they will say, "Well, the Bible doesn't mention abortion." But the answer to that is that the Bible doesn't mention a lot of things. So silence on something does not mean that the Bible's condoning. It doesn't talk about homophobia. It doesn't talk about racism. Really, it doesn't talk about revenge porn. All these things. It doesn't talk about any of those things. But we know by inference that these things are wrong. And I think Jesus spoke about how we should look after the weak and the vulnerable. And since abortion is literally the powerful destroying the weak, I think we can conclude that abortion is wrong on biblical principles. I think. Yeah. I don't think it's a hard one to push back on. To be honest, I don't really know where they'll talk about. I wrote a response to a BBC article that gave voice to 3 or 4 pro-choice Christians, and the arguments that they gave were so vapid. They really were. It was like, well, I wouldn't be part of a faith that denied women the choice to do things, because believing in God is about God give us free will. That's what it was. God gives us free will. He gives us the will to choose. Like the will to choose what? Kill your offspring? Like what?
Right.
It didn't make any sense at all. It was just an appeal to emotion. But I replied to that. I did a full article on that.
So you mentioned there, a bad pro-abortion argument, whether it comes from obviously a misguided Christian or because I have no problem saying that if you're listening right now and you're a Christian and you are pro-abortion choice, then you need to read your Bible more carefully.
Yeah, they're mutually exclusive.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say, what would you say if somebody's listening right now and they're interested in, okay, I want to begin to make the case for life? And what are some objections that commonly come up when you're engaging in these types of discussions? Like, give us like 2 or 3 that they better be ready to hear an answer kind of thing.
Okay. Don't like an abortion, don't have one.
Oh, so what do you say to that?
I don't like slavery, don't own a slave. Don't like spousal abuse, don't beat your wife. Like this objection is probably the most common. You'd see this all the time, all over Twitter, all over Facebook. Don't like an abortion, don't have one. And it's confusing objective claims with subjective claims. Okay, so it doesn't matter whether I like abortion or not. Abortion could be my most favorite thing in the world to do, but it would still be wrong. So it's not a preference. It's not like ice cream, where you can choose one flavor over another. So it's nothing to do with it doesn't matter whether you like abortion. It's whether it's wrong or not. So they confuse subjective claims with objective claims. So I'm making the objective claim that abortion is wrong. It's not a preference. It's not a flavor of something. It's objectively wrong, and you need to show me why that's not true. Instead of just saying, don't like one, don't have one. Because I could just say that about anything. You don't like homophobia, don't be homophobic. If I said that, the person would be pretty quick to tell me why I don't understand why they're against homophobia. Because you're dealing with a person, okay, a human being.
Yeah. And
it's the same with abortion. It's not whether I like it or not. It's whether we can kill a human being.
Yeah.
Like that's the question, not preference.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's one that I like how you always go back to that. What is the unborn, or the question is whether or not we should kill a human being? Because one of the things that bothers me is when you'll hear people and they'll say, well, pro-life versus pro-choice. And it kind of bothers me a little bit because I think, well, I'm pro-choice. Like I think I'm pro-choice of lots of things, but I sometimes I find it helpful in conversations to say, well, if you're pro-choice, what are you pro that they have the ability to choose, to make them kind of own what they're claiming? You know what I mean? So what's another one? So one of them is if you don't like abortion, don't get one.
Don't have one.
What's another one?
No uterus, no opinion.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Which makes Roe v. Wade really awkward.
Yes, because it was voted in by nine men.
Right.
If that's the case, get rid of it. I'm fine. That's fine.
I'm all for that.
The same in the UK with David Steele, the MP, as far as I know, didn't have a uterus. So who knows these days, he might have.
Oh my gosh.
So David, he was a man. All these male politicians in Northern Ireland, all of them have an opinion on abortion. So it's fine as long as they're in favor of abortion, but not so fine if you're not in favor of abortion. And in that case, your internal organs have the final say. So it's not, yeah.
Wow.
So the typical
Brian's recovering right now, I think.
arguments have no gender. No gender.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter who is saying it. The argument needs to live and die on its own merits, not the lack of an internal organ.
Now nowadays you could say, I you know what, I happen to have one. And who are you to say that I don't? And you probably get away with that.
Yes. Right.
Yeah, just use their own language against them. Well, actually, when I discuss abortion, I identify as a pregnant woman. So,
and you're chest feeding right now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Men do have breasts, so why don't they just call it breastfeeding? I don't understand.
Peck
It's
feeding.
the mammary gland that counts, not the breast. Anyway. So, yeah, and also it ignores the 50% of the women as well. Like there are so many pro-life females out there. I mean, and also women who don't, from maybe medical reasons, don't have a uterus. Like what? And then the big one is just like, I mean, trans men, if trans men are men, then they also don't get an opinion, even though they can give, I don't know.
It just breaks down to absurdity, really.
Yeah. Well, it's a classic case of attacking the person and not their arguments.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's an ad hominem.
Oh, yeah. So you've given us some of the ones that are more common that you're going to hear on Facebook and, Twitter, things like that. What would you say are some of their stronger arguments? Like, what are the ones that, are really tough to wrestle with? I think you've already mentioned one, if you don't mind me saying.
Go for it.
The one where they'll say that a unborn child is a human, but they're not a person. Is that one of the tougher ones to deal with?
There's a tougher one than that.
Oh, okay. What's that?
So I don't know if you've heard of the violinist argument. Have you? No.
Yes.
Okay, so this was an argument devised by a philosopher called Judith Jarvis Thompson, who I think she died late last year, and she came up with this argument. I think it's kind of, can I use the word father of? It's the mother of the bodily autonomy argument. I think this is where they get, so a lot of pro-choice activists will use this argument even if they've never heard of it. So that's how well ingrained it is in the pro-choice movement.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can imagine, then her argument goes like this. Imagine one day that you wake up and you're surgically attached to a famous violinist, okay? But don't worry, because you're only going to be attached to this violinist for 9 months, but you have to sustain this person to keep them alive. And if you don't, they'll die. And that'll be your fault. So the analogy here is with pregnancy. So you're morally obliged then to carry an unborn child for 9 months. So the argument then is, should you have to be, if you woke up and found that you were attached to this violinist, are you morally obliged to stay attached to keep this person alive? And the conclusion that she draws is that, no, you're not. And I think you and I would say the same thing. No, you're not. You're not obliged. But then, of course, if you draw that parallel with abortion and you don't think too deeply about it, the wheels could fall off, I think, your pro-life argument. You'll think, oh, well, you know, if you're not obliged to keep a violinist alive, then you're not who is undeniably a human being, a person. Then why would you be obliged to keep a fetus alive for 9 months?
Why would I'm not? Maybe I'm missing something in that, because is there an argument why you're not obliged? Because to my mind, if that person is a person, then I would be obliged. If it's going to be my responsibility, if there's something, if it's on me that that person dies, if they're detached, then I would seem obligated.
Yeah, I think this is where the strength of her argument lies, in that unlike all other abortion arguments, she grants the fetus. And by the way, I use the word fetus, I don't mind, because that is a scientific term. It's just a human being at a certain level of development.
Sure.
I don't mind. I know some pro-lifers take exception to the word fetus, but I don't. And it's Latin for little one, so who cares? I have no. So yes. So Thompson in her argument grants full personhood to the fetus. Okay, she says, yeah, it's a human being, it's alive, it's a full person, and we can still kill it. So she grants full personhood to the unborn, which kind of takes the wheel, or the intention of that is to take the wind out of the pro-life sails. But I think where it fails, and you touched on this, is that for an analogy to be successful, I think it has to be relevant in significant ways, not just superficially relevant.
Correct. Right.
Yeah. So while there are superficial similarities between being attached to a violinist for 9 months and being pregnant for 9 months, I don't think they're similar enough in relevant ways. For example, the relationship between you and a stranger is different morally and legally than the relationship between you and your children. And that's not really taken into account in Thompson's argument. I think we are obliged to keep our children alive. And I think the relationship is different. You're not obliged to keep strangers alive, although it's nice if you do, but you are obliged to keep your children alive. And I think the biggest difference is that abortion is not just merely the withdrawal of sustenance, as she argues here, but abortion involves the extra step of electively killing what it is you want to get rid of.
Right.
Yeah, let's chop up the violinist in order to get him off. Exactly.
So, yeah, you detach him and then you cut his head off and his limbs and you throw him in a petri dish and then into a medical bin. Now you have an analogy slightly closer to abortion. So it doesn't work on that level. And also, pregnancy is not an ailment. It's a perfectly natural biological function. I know it can lead to complications and ailments, but it's not a sick violinist attached, gasping for life for 9 months. They're not the same.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'll be honest. I've heard Braxton Hunter. He's a YouTube apologist.
Yeah, I know, bro.
Yeah, and I love him. And I've heard him say that the violinist argument is just, when you really break it down, it results to being just not a very good argument. And I think you've just demonstrated that, where it kind of has that initial oomph to it.
Yeah.
When you first hear it, like, whoa, that seems substantial. That seems tough. But then when you actually begin to break it down and compare it to what it actually means to carry a child and how that baby got there in the first place and all those things, it begins to crumble. Yeah.
It's rhetorically powerful and emotionally powerful, but there's no substance behind it really once you start, as you say, breaking it apart.
I'll just follow on with that idea of something being rhetorically powerful. For me, the biggest and maybe emotionally difficult one is, well, this baby is the product of rape. And so you've got this negative event, and therefore it's almost like, hey, this was forced upon me. I didn't choose this. Now I'm forced into this position. And so because of the negativity of that wrong event, it's almost like this other event, the child is wrong. The child would remind me of this forever. I'm stuck with this forever. Now, for me, that is emotionally difficult. But as you say, when you take everything back to what is the unborn, like, well, this is a child. And so to my mind, it's difficult, obviously, to deal with the implications of not only the rape, but now your life situation has changed. But it doesn't make abortion okay still, based upon that idea of what is the unborn. So it's more of like, well, we're going to deal with this in a very sensitive way, obviously. But have you got much interaction when it comes to that sort of objection, and what's your take on it?
Yeah, well, you have, yeah, a few times, but I tend to find that it's somebody who's appealing to the hard cases to disguise what they really want.
Yeah,
which is
a good
abortion
point.
on demand. So, so I would typically ask them, well, if we could legislate between us the abortion law, and you can have abortion in cases of rape, and then I'll make all other abortions illegal, would you be okay with that? And they always say, no. I would say, well, why are you using rape then as your argument, when really you want abortion for all sorts of reasons, much more common than rape, because a rape accounts statistically for tiny fraction of all abortion cases. So why not go for the most popular one, which is failed contraception? Like, why not take that as your line instead of appealing to like the hard cases?
Yeah.
But as you say, when you go back to the core question is, what is the unborn? And then do what Greg Koukl does. What he recommends you do is to trot out the toddler. Can you kill a 2-year-old who was the product of rape for the same reasons?
Yeah, great. Mm-hmm.
No, you can't. So then what difference does the location of this baby make? None at all. But I fully accept how difficult that is. And sometimes they go down that line to make you look like a monster. Because if you're consistent in your pro-life convictions and you say, well, no, I don't believe in abortion, even in cases of rape, I mean, you've set yourself up to be an animal, like, really.
Yeah. On the other hand, you I suppose a case could be made to say, listen, there's a Christian community and there's plenty of people who want to adopt. So why don't we make a registry of everyone who happens to be pregnant because of rape, and we'll fast track those kids to be adopted. And I'm sure that the people would, take care of the mother in some sort of way. And there's so much charity to be found along those lines of things, because I mean, people want to have children. People want to, raise kids and they can't, or they have difficulties and that sort of thing. To say that there's not other options to put in place for that, why just go down the line of abortion? And then I love what you said there, that usually that's just it just never occurred to me. Usually that's you're saying that that's not what they really want. They're not concerned about these rape cases. They're concerned about using that as a rhetorical device to get something different. Very interesting.
Yeah, it's the same with the claim. I think you'd agree when they say, well, I'm not in favor of abortion except in the case of rape or the life of the mother. And you can use the same kind of tactic and say, oh, okay, well, let's say that I'll grant you those abortions just for the sake of argument. Sure. Then can I get rid of all the other arguments, or I mean, all the other abortions, excuse me. And typically you'll get the same kind of reply. Oh, no. Yeah, because that's why Koukl calls these dishonest ways to argue. When you appeal to the hard cases, he calls this a dishonest way to argue. And I think that's a great point, that it helps kind of unmask their real intentions.
Sure.
What would you say to someone who would say, well, I'm not in favor of abortion except in the case of the life of the mother? I mean, I know I have responded to that in a couple ways, but I'm curious to see what you would say there.
Yeah, I think what they're really asking is what do we do when the life of the mother is at risk? And if that's the case, then I don't think we can stand around and do nothing.
Right. But is that an abortion?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Although the outcome is the same, but the intention is not. And I think the intention
Right.
in law and morality and philosophy and every discipline is that the intention is key. And if the intention is to do the best to try and save both lives, but one life being weaker just doesn't make it, then I don't think that's an abortion.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just a tragic outcome of trying to do your best. We just have to do the best with what knowledge we have and in the circumstances we have. You know, if a car is going off a cliff and you only have the chance to save one person, well, that's a bit of a cliche, but you would do that. You know, you're not then guilty of killing the other person because you tried.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think there's any pro-lifer. I mean, there might be who doesn't think that abortion in the case of the mother's life. I don't think there's too many that would object to that. And again, that was already catered for in Northern Irish law. So
Yeah.
it's not what they want, really.
Yeah. Yes. Agreed. So Brian has the the pleasure of knowing you personally. I do not. I just met the bigot today. So why the anonymous? Why are you anonymous? I mean, what's your kind of?
Well, Brian knows a bit of my bit of my backstory and the industry that I work in.
Oh, okay.
Now, I'm quite fortunate in the fact that the guys that I work with, my employers, are genuinely tolerant people. We have a lot of diverse opinions and ideas. But I think if I was to post some of the stuff that I post in my personal profile, I have no doubt that there are certain people who will go straight to my employers because I've seen them do it to others. And that would give my employers a headache. And they're nice people. I don't want that to happen to them. And it meant that if I ever left that particular employment, it would be very difficult, given the nature of my business, to find work again. So for that reason, I like to stay anonymous. But I have thought about, like, why does it matter? Why can't there's plenty of guys out there who just go about their thing on the other side and they don't care. So why should I? So maybe in the future, maybe I won't be. I don't know. Who knows? But that's my main reason. And I'll give an example actually. Recently, a politician here, Nelson McCausland, who I can either take or leave. He's not. This guy, he on Twitter, he posted an article by Christian guy, a gay Christian, who became a Christian and then spoke about his transition and how he no longer lives that lifestyle. And it was a great article, in fairness. But there was a big outcry for this politician who was seen to be advocating for gay conversion therapy, and how this was outrageous that a politician here should be doing that, and he should basically be immediately decapitated, and his head should be put on a spike outside City Hall as a warning to all the other bigots.
So was this? Are you using figurative language, or is this was what was actually said?
See, you can't even tell, and that's frightening. Yes,
I took it to be hyperbole, but maybe I don't know.
Yeah. No. They did. The feedback. The pushback. There was a lot of outrage over this and this guy's job. This guy should quit. He should resign. This is ridiculous. However, if you read the article, it mentioned nothing of gay conversion therapy. The guy didn't even say that he wasn't gay anymore. He just said that this is something he struggles with and that he's a Christian now and it's not the life that he wants to lead. And by the way, this is in a culture that says, live your best life, do what's good for you, whatever makes you happy. And here's this guy saying, not being gay makes me happy. I'm living my best life as a Christian. And these guys are going, no, not that kind of best life, the best life that we mean. And so there was this huge uproar, all because they couldn't be bothered to read the article and develop a nuanced opinion on it. And I just thought, if I did that in my personal capacity, there's no coming back from that. Even if you're completely innocent, the damage will be done. Nobody cares in the end. If you got sacked, let go of your job, had to go on benefits, there would be nobody backing you up, because what's done is done. That's it. The mob rule. That's one reason.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I sympathize with that because I am in a public government job myself. And I've often wondered if the wrong person got a hold of something I said or wrote, what the consequences of that could be. So I completely get where you're coming from. It makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be re-educated. I mean, you'd be sent on some course and you'd have to apologize in front of 40 people.
Right.
Like the woman from The Mandalorian who had to go in front of a committee of 40 people from the LGBT movement and apologize. And it was really quite scary.
Yes.
So I can't be bothered with that. I really can't. And I'm not over exaggerating, or I'm not pleading persecution or anything like that. I just, because I have seen it happen with local people here. Guys that we would know, Brian, have been brought before the secular high priest and given a talking to.
Well, I suppose there's a thing like, you know, just trying to be wise, and like if you're why unnecessarily subject yourself to all kinds of trouble you don't need when it's just their way of controlling the culture or instilling fear or something. Like, okay, well, I don't need that.
Yeah,
I can still argue my position without taking flack.
No, absolutely.
All right. Well, Bigot, thank you for joining us. The Belfast Bigot from belfastbigot.com. Anywhere else you want to point people on Facebook? Where can they find your stuff if they want to follow or troll you?
Just the Belfast Bigot page. If you type that into Facebook, it'll come up.
All right. Well, before we wrap up the Belfast Bigot, I wanted to find out if people want to be better equipped to defend the sanctity of life or a life view, what are your go-to resources? What are your recommendations?
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, The Case for Life by Scott Klusendorf is highly recommended. It's easy to read. It's a compelling set of arguments, very logical, very clear. Why Pro-Life by Randy Alcorn, I think came before Scott Klusendorf's book and may have had an influence on it. I think he writes a foreword or vice versa, but they do know each other. And what I tell some of my readers is a good idea is to read abortion literature as well. Now, be careful here because it's an acquired taste, but I read a book written by abortion practitioners for abortion practitioners. It's a medical book called Abortion Care by Sam Rowlands. And it details, the dirty secrets. They just say it. They just say things. They say sometimes, oh, it's better not to tell the women what really happens because we've done studies on this and it upsets them, so we just don't tell them. And you're like, oh, so what about this informed choice that you keep talking about, trusting women? No? Okay. Maybe it's because they're killing their child. They find it distressing? No? Okay. So I would read a lot of pro-choice stuff, like authentic pro-choice stuff, like from the academia, the high ups, the guys at the top of the chain, some compelling stuff, and that's where the best pro-life arguments come from, I find. So Abortion Care, Love Unleashes Life, Abortion and the Art of Communicating Truth by Stephanie Gray. Stephanie Gray is fantastic. She's part of the Life Training Institute with Scott Klusendorf, I think. She's done a couple of debates. She actually debated an abortion doctor within the last year. That's on YouTube, got lots of views. She was fantastic. The poor guy had no idea what hit him. The Ethics of Abortion, Women's Rights, Human Life, and the Questions of Justice by a Catholic philosopher, Christopher Kazor, K-A-C-Z-O-R. And it's a philosophical book. It doesn't really, he's a Catholic, but he doesn't really talk about religion in it, and that's quite deliberate. And then Love Thy Body by Nancy Pearcey. Highly recommended. It's not all about abortion, but she talks a lot about why abortion is important in today's culture and how it's influenced by postmodernism and all that kind of, all the philosophies and ideas of men. Brilliant. So Nancy Pearcey, I recommend that.
Well, very good. We'll point our listeners that way. Thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Nice meeting you both.
Well, that's it for today's podcast. Thank you for joining us. If you have a question you'd like us to address or just a message for us, feedback good or bad, email us at podcast@apologetics315.com, and you can leave a voice message for us using a service called SpeakPipe. Just go to today's podcast page for the episode and hit the link and leave us a message. Remember, if you include a Ghostbusters quote in your question, We guarantee it will be read on the podcast, and we ensure up to 50% better quality answers. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please leave a review in iTunes or the podcast platform of your choice. And please share this episode with a friend if you found it useful. Remember, you can find the resources we've mentioned today on today's show notes. You can also check out the Belfast Bigot at thebelfastbigot.com, also on Facebook. And any other apologetics resources you want to find, go over to Apologetics 315 or Truth Bomb Apologetics at truthbomb.blogspot.com. This is Brian Otten
And Chad Gross
for the Apologetics 315 podcast, and thanks for listening.
Frostbank won't charge fees on overdrafts $100 or less based on qualifying conditions. That means no fees on accidental overdrafts, emergency overdrafts, or even when you sign up for a free audio streaming trial to listen to more than the same 8 CDs you've had in your sedan since '03, but then you never use it because, hey, they're 8 great CDs, and completely forget to cancel the trial until it bills you for a full year. Overdrafts.
None of us is perfect, which is why Frost is introducing $100 overdraft grace if you meet qualifying conditions. Learn more at frostbank.com/overdraft.
Frostbank won't charge fees on overdrafts $100 or less based on qualifying conditions. That means no fees on accidental overdrafts, emergency overdrafts, or even when you sign up for a free audio streaming trial to listen to more than the same 8 CDs you've had in your sedan since '03, but then you never use it because, hey, they're 8 great CDs, and completely forget to cancel the trial until it bills you for a full year. Overdrafts.
None of us is perfect, which is why Frost is introducing $100 overdraft grace if you meet qualifying conditions. Learn more at frostbank.com/overdraft.